I'm so excited to have my favorite New York-based divorce attorney back on the podcast. So,
Fantastic.
Miss Kristen Farris, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you so much for having me back.
So, we dropped a reel that was a hot cake on TikTok, and the topic that you and I discussed was prenups. So, I thought I have to have her back, and I have to get deeper, more of a deeper dive into the do's and don'ts of a prenup.
Sure.
So let's say, it's for a woman and she comes to you, she's engaged, obviously financials. I don't know what that looks like, but she comes to you and she goes, Kristen, what's the best way to cover my butt, so to speak, moving forward into this marriage? Financially, legally, what would you tell her?
So the first thing I always ask the question of what are your intents when you get older? Do you
Mm.
want to be a stay-at-home mom? Do you want to work? What is it that you're looking to do in the future? If your plans are, I want to be the head of a company and I don't plan on staying home and I want to be a CEO or have all these financial dreams, then we want to look more on the financial aspect of protecting assets for you and what your liability could be in the future. But if you have somebody that expects that they're going to be a mom and they want to stay at home and they don't want to climb the corporate ladder per se, then you want to make sure that they're protected in terms of spousal support and potential child support and things like that. Because a lot of people in prenups automatically waive spousal support or maintenance or alimony or whatever you want to call it. But that's what a lot of people put into their prenups is they each waive alimony. And by the time you get divorced, you've now got a couple kids, you haven't been working for a while, and you now forget about the prenup. You go and your husband decides he wants to get a divorce. Now you've just screwed yourself because you agreed while you were in your 20s, oh, I'm going to waive it because I don't think it's ever going to happen. Because again, what did I say? Nobody gets married thinking you're going to get divorced.
Right.
So people will never think that it'll happen to them. And then when the time comes, ring, 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 here's the prenup, and it's throwing you nothing.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What are some provisions that people try that you've seen in your past experience have tried adding into prenups that are ridiculous? I know last time you and I spoke, and the more money the people have, the crazy, requests that come your way.
Right.
I believe last time you said some gentleman put in his prenup that if his wife were to gain weight,
Yep.
she would only get a certain amount, or if anything, in the divorce. What are some other crazy stories that you have to share with us?
So I've had a couple prenups that had to do with like animals. Like they've had these animals and that they automatically will say, well, one parent will get this custody of this animal. And then they had one that said if we get divorced, the dog has to go to a special doggy resort and neither one of us would get custody of the dog. And then we'd have visitation rights. So I've seen those things in their
Oh
prenups.
my.
And I laugh at about it because I'm like, yeah, you have the dog now, but just remember the lifespan of animals. You don't know when you're going to get divorced, so it may be a moot point. So then we have to put these forever provisions in there about if you ever have a dog, not just the one you currently have, then this is what we have to put in there. But I've seen a lot of stuff about like travel provisions, like they restrict the parties from ever traveling. Like if my spouse ever decides they want to travel outside of the United States or want to live outside the United States, they get nothing. Or if they ever try to leave us and move to like Canada, I've seen so many issues with that as well. Like
Wow.
spouses who have international jobs or the part of like relocation where like their job could send them to Dubai or to London. And if they have to relocate, they get these provisions. Well, if my spouse is relocating, then they will automatically get nothing and I get everything. Or I've seen those ones before. A lot of things is either money based with regard to alimony and like most of it's against women. I hate to say it, but a lot of these provisions are against women. Well, don't get fat. Don't have you have to have so many amounts of kids. If you can't produce a male heir, if your mother-in-law is involved too much, then you lose this. And it's very chauvinistic and it's very sad that a lot of women feel that they have to agree to these things just to get married.
Hmm.
And it drives me crazy because I'm sitting there all the time. And even though I represent the men sometimes in these situations, if I represent the woman, I have to sit there and be like, you really need to consider this. How much do you love your person before you jump into, this contract? Because some of these things are just too crazy for me.
Well, and I feel like a prenup kind of just shows you what you're getting yourself into with the mentality of the person you're marrying. If that prenup is very one-sided, your marriage is going to be one-sided.
Well, that's how I've look at it as well.
Hmm.
If they're looking for you to put in these crazy provisions and it's not like your standard cookie cutter type of things,
Right.
then that just makes me foresee what the future is going to hold for you.
Hmm. What would you tell a woman that came out of a divorce, let's say a high conflict divorce, and she's dating and she's thinking about marriage and the idea of marriage again, and she's out there, she's dating, let's say she meets somebody and they see it going somewhere, and she's a mom. What in her prenup would you suggest, considering this is not her first rodeo?
You definitely want to protect the assets that they currently have. That's the first thing. So, if, for example, you've come out of divorce and you are getting your spouse's pension, or you've inherited from the divorce part of your spouse's retirement assets or investment accounts like IRAs, 401ks, deferred comps, anything like that, you want to solidify that everything that's from that account going forward as well, if you decide you want to still contribute towards it, would be separate property that your net soon to be spouse or new spouse would not be able to get anything of that. Because the way that the laws work now, mostly in the United States, is even if you got that from prior to the marriage, if you continue to contribute towards something and you're using marital money into that asset. So if you are having an IRA that you inherited from a prior divorce and now you're investing in that IRA post now marriage to your second marriage, you're using marital money. Your spouse could potentially get a portion of that IRA from the marital money that you're using. So you would like to protect that going forward, whether you use marital money or not. So you'd want to say, that's not off the table. Don't touch that. I got that from my first divorce. Leave it alone and move on. And then if you have kids, we want to put something in the provisions regarding support that the other spouse is not liable to support your child from a prior relationship. Because a lot of people assume that because you're married, now that person could be responsible for taking over some of the financial burden of that child. And I'm like, I don't understand where you come up with that, but you want to put that in there and that the other person would have no rights to that child unless there becomes a competing God forbid one person dies or something, they could
Right.
file a petition in court, but you want to make sure that those rights are established.
In your experience, I'm sure you see sometimes couples bringing different incomes to the table, or maybe she makes more than he does and vice versa. What are normally the outcomes of a divorce where, let's say, she makes more money than he does and there's no prenup? I mean, she's gonna owe him, assuming alimony and if there's children, child support, just like if he was the main breadwinner, correct? Or how does that
Correct. Yeah, so the what I say is the law is gender blind.
work?
There is no law that says, oh, women are exempt from having to pay alimony or spousal support or child support. We look at the financial numbers and it's black and white. If one spouse makes more money than the other one, they are going to be responsible for paying the other spouse. So if there's a huge disparity, the larger the disparity in income, the more they're going to be responsible for supporting the other spouse. So if you're a woman and you're making $200,000, $250,000, whatever it is, and your spouse, your husband is only making 100,000, you are going to pay them alimony and child support, even if you have joint custody. Well, I mean, that's the law here in New York, but I know I've heard from other states and other people in other states that say that's the same thing, that even if you have joint custody, if you make more money, you are going to be responsible for supporting your children to the other parent. So, as an example, I have a case right now where they're joint custody, 50-50. Husband has 50% of the time, wife has 50% of the time, but the wife makes more money than the husband. She makes significantly more money than the husband. They both work, similar schedules. She just happens to make more money. I tried to take what she would have owed in child support and cut it in half because she still has to support those kids half the time.
Hmm.
So if she's now having, if the normal calculation says that she would have to pay, say, $3,000 in child support, the idea is, well, if you have the kids half the time, then cut that in half. So then she should really only have to pay 1,500. Some judges are like, yeah, no, you still have to pay 3,000.
Wow.
And then they're sitting there going, but wait a second, I still have to provide a roof over their heads. I still have to provide them food and clothes and their haircuts and their activities and whatever it is. Why are the other parent getting the windfall? And the law, at least here in New York, has not changed where it says that it's an automatic with joint custody. It says it's a factor that a court can consider. So if a judge decides, doesn't matter, I'm not considering it, there's no law that says it has to be cut in half. So some people will get screwed, one, depending on the judge, and two, just because they make more money. And that's why this tale as old as time idea that men always get screwed in the divorce because they've always been the breadwinners. It's not as so black and white these days because there are a lot of women who make more money than their partners.
There are. And would you say too that recently, in the cases that you've overseen, that that has been the case, that the woman is bringing more money to the table than the man?
Oh, yeah. I'm seeing it more, especially where our demographic is. Like we're right outside New York City,
Right.
and you're seeing more of these corporate women coming into these relationships. And when you do like prenups, for example, and maybe I'm guilty of it too, but when I got married, I didn't have a pot to piss in. Like I didn't have money coming out of my ears at that point. So
Right.
people don't think about it when you go to get married because you're not getting divorced when you get married. That's
Right.
not the idea. And people are thinking to themselves, oh, well, because I don't have a prenup, it's because I don't have any money. No, the idea with prenups is you think about the future. So you're having these women who were in their 20s or their young 30s and they weren't at the top of their craft. And now they're in their 40s, maybe early 50s, and now they're all getting divorced, whether they wanted it or not. And they're getting screwed because they've put themselves into a position where they've been the money and the spouse that makes the more money. And now they're getting to the point where now they have to pay their spouse. And even if they didn't want their spouse to not make more money or they didn't want their spouse to be a stay-at-home parent, I get that a lot too.
Right.
Like the idea is, but I didn't tell him not to get a job. He refused to get his ass off the couch. So somebody had to work.
Hmm.
And the courts don't care.
No, they
The
don't.
courts are like, we don't care what you did or didn't do. You allowed it.
Mhm.
Well, I didn't. I didn't sit there and say to him, you have to stay on the couch or you can't do this.
Right.
They refused. And the court says, then file sooner. Why did you wait so
Wait.
long to file?
Hmm. Have you
And
noticed
that's
too
where
that
people get screwed.
it takes women longer to file?
Oh,
They
yeah.
they knew 5 years ago, 6 years ago that this marriage wasn't going to work. They saw the forest through the trees. They
Mhm.
knew where the train was going, and they just keep biding their time and biding their time. And I think we all need to realize, and I think you're probably in the perfect realm of work to agree with me. As women, we need to realize if we see that this is coming to a dead end eventually, if we know that there is no change, if we've tried therapy, if we've tried all the things they tell you to try to make your marriage last and nothing's changing, why are we still waiting so long to pull the trigger?
And I think that's the biggest reality and trend, I guess you could say, in divorce world is because women are emotionally driven.
Hmm.
They will try everything they can to salvage the relationship and making sure that they've done everything that they possibly could find as a remedy
Right.
to save their marriage,
Hmm.
hoping that these things would get better, praying that these things will get better, doing the therapy, talking to their spouse, mandating that their spouse go to therapy, doing everything they can that they don't want to get the kids involved or they're trying to salvage their kids from being, involved in a two-parent household or the idea that they don't want to not see their kids all this time or losing time or whatever it may be. And you have the situation where, well, I said 5 years ago this wasn't going anywhere, but I was waiting for the kids to turn teenagers.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
guess
that's a
what?
lot.
That extra 5 years just screwed you.
Right.
You knew it
Right.
wasn't going anywhere. So why didn't you pull the trigger then?
Hmm.
And it's that shoulda, coulda, woulda mentality that causes all of these problems. And I think, as you hit the nail on the head, women need to remember that if you know right now that this is not for you and this is not working, or there's some other reason like cheating or financial abuse or whatever it is, don't wait
Hmm.
because the waiting period could actually hurt you more than if you did it at that moment.
Yes, 100%. I could not agree with you more. Now, not to put you on the spot, but would you say that the outcome of your divorce is only as good as your judge and not your attorney? I think a lot of people think sometimes, oh, I've got this big, badass, hard hitting attorney that's going to fight for me. She or he's a bulldog in the courtroom. That's great because I had myself one of those types. But at the end of the day, I also feel like, too, your outcome in your case is only going to end up so great depending on the judge you have.
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I agree 100% that if you are going to litigation and you have to go before a judge, the judge will make or break your case.
Hmm.
Absolutely. If you have, like, I can tell you in one of the counties that we have right now, there is one judge that I strongly disagree with in terms of child support and spousal support because she is very much against I will not cut child support in half if you have 50% custody. And I don't believe in that. I believe that if you're supporting your kids half the time, then you should not be receiving 100% of child support. Go get your ass off the couch and get a job, right?
Hmm.
But I do agree that there should be some calculation. You go to another judge, some of these other judges have never done matrimonial cases before.
Mm.
Some of them have never set foot in a divorce, have never had to deal with a divorce, have never had to deal with divorce litigants.
Right.
So they're elected and they're sitting here going, oh, well, I've only done med mal. So you're waiting for the attorneys to school the judges.
Mm.
And sometimes that actually hurts because if the judges are friends with certain attorneys, now they're going to be guided by certain attorneys. So
Mm.
you could have the biggest pit bull in the world, but unless your attorney knows the judge and unless that judge knows what they're doing and will be willing to work with your case, that's what can screw you over.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's a combination of both. So what you asked me is it a make or break it based on your judge? Absolutely. Some judges are going to be in favor of certain things. Some judges stand on principle and refuse to do certain things. But the attorneys make a big deal too.
Right.
Because if, like, say, for example, we are outside New York City. Recently, we've been getting a huge influx of New York City attorneys coming outside of the city to practice law.
Oh, wow, that's
We are a
interesting.
smaller network of divorce attorneys. Like maybe I've talking about it with you before, but there is probably in the one county, there's like 10, 15 of us that we solely just do matrimonial and family court. These attorneys that are coming out of the city have no idea who we are. They don't know how I practice law. They don't know the judges that are here. I can sit there and tell you this judge is going to do this judge is going to do that. Why are we arguing this? It's never going to happen. Sorry, you're getting screwed with this judge, but it is what it is. And they will fight for certain things. And I just look at them and go, why? Like you're tooting your own horn just to hear yourself talk. Like you don't understand it. So some people think by getting these high-powered, very expensive attorneys in Manhattan who charge $1,000 an hour, you're going to get better bang for your buck. And it's not true at all.
No.
You may want somebody like myself who's charging $475 an hour instead of the $1,000 an hour, who knows the judges, knows the other attorneys, knows what's going to happen in your case, and still get the same result you're going to get whether you spend $1,000 an hour or the $475 an hour.